welcome again to Southern Nights, your local astronomy program, and welcome again to Ian Cooper. Now, we're looking a little bit more relaxed today than we sometimes are, and sadly, that's because today's a bit like a trip down memory lane for us, because today is our final show.
It had to come one day.
Well, I guess, how about today? Actually, we're going to screen it 5 times in the week, so we'll have 5 final shows. Now, that's pretty good going.
Actually, talking about reminiscing, George, if you think about it, we were actually lucky to get this far because wasn't it at the end of, was it 2012 or 2011, it was going to be the end of the world, and that was going to be the final show.
That was going to be the final show. In fact, I remember we talked about that. So we've covered some amazing topics, Ian. I mean, the end of the world.
Yeah.
You can't. That's a pretty big topic to beat.
Yeah, it's a good one to look back on.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's good to look back on the end of the world with a smile on your dial.
That's right.
Right. We've actually covered all sorts of things, and when you think of astronomy, it's amazing the wide range of topics that we can look at, isn't it?
It is, and I think the show's been a reflection of the many different things you can get into in astronomy. If you want to be just general, and you can actually do a lot of different things, or you can be specific and just follow one path in astronomy, and that'll keep you busy, for the rest of your life. But if you want to follow the general things that happen all the time and get interested in those, then you're going to be very, very occupied, like we have been for the last 2.5 years. So, and I think the show's reflected that.
Well, it's been a fairly kind of quick 2.5 years too, hasn't it? I mean, but there's a lot happened. I mean, we had a book launch.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, what was the name of the book again, Ian, please?
Imaging the Southern Sky. Yeah.
Thank you. And so that was those of you who will recall, book basically written by Ian with photographs by Stephen Chadwick. So world-class writ and photos. Here we go.
Yep.
Now, what have we also covered? I mean,
well, we've had probably we'd say the usual amount of things like lunar eclipses, partial solar eclipse, that sort of thing. Been a couple of good comets come through just this year, and a really big one the year before.
Now the comets, of course. Yeah, we had the 2 at once comets as well.
That's
so
right. And
that was pretty
rare.
amazing. Yeah. So we covered some rare events. I mean, what about the huge solar flare?
Yes, this big solar flare that came out a while back, and unfortunately there haven't been enough of those really, because they lead to other interesting things that we used to see regularly, but the sun's gone a bit quiet in that respect. But there were a couple of other things relating to the sun that we managed to get a good look at. The trip up to Napier to see the transit of Venus. Unfortunately the weather wasn't very kind here, but your cameraman came along and recorded that event, and that was very special. Because you really only get one chance at that, and then it's a huge gap to the next time. None of us will be around to see that again, so that was a great achievement, and we did well considering how rough the weather was that particular June. But and it's that sort of thing that the show was able to capture, and as part of the progress through that time, and give people in the audience a chance to sort of see that it's not just a matter of just going out and looking at the planets, the odd bright star cluster and things like that. There's a lot happening in the sky. There's opportunities for people with a reasonable camera to get out and take photos, and which, modern day digital cameras, with a little bit of training, and it's only a minimal amount of training, just a reasonable tripod, you can actually get some pretty good photos. I think you had to go yourself, George.
Yes, I certainly had a crack, and was very pleased with the results.
Yep.
And so my next crack is going to be videoing the constellations. So so I'm starting into that area.
Yep. And
but of course, with the transit of Venus, now that was the reason Captain Cook came and discovered New Zealand. He was trying to do the transit, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he did it from Tahiti because that was a known place, and then after he successfully observed it from there, then the next task was to go down and find this supposed great southern land that there was thought to be down here.
Which was Australia, obviously.
Well, not necessarily. They were thinking that there would be something a lot bigger, and because Tasman had found basically the east coast of New Zealand, they figured there might be this huge landmass further. West Coast, sorry, further east there would be all this other land, and of course he proved the point that he wasn't. In fact, he went so far down south that he was down in the land of the Auroras, down past Stewart Island and heading into iceberg country. So pretty much put that one to bed, and sort of showed that that we live in this massive great ocean, and because of that, our climate is such as fairly volatile, and so sometimes waiting for that good night to get out and do some astronomy, you might have to wait a while, and if there's a big event on and it's only happening on that day, then you might have to do a bit of driving to go and see it, which is what we did with the transit. So, and that's what he did. He had to travel, and we had to travel, and but it was a great experience.
Well, of course, now we've had a whole heap of other things we've covered in. I mean, we've looked at the equipment that you use, so anything from binoculars to telescopes to cameras to even one show was even on the telescope stand, I think you called it. The mounting, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, people underestimate what's required, unfortunately, with to do things, to get up to the serious stage where you produce pretty good photos. You can start off and do some pretty good stuff with a tripod, but once you start magnifying things, then you start encountering the fact that we're actually on a ball that's rotating, and that movement means the stars appear to move across the sky, and you need something to counteract that, and so you need a proper, what we call an equatorial mounting, that enables you to do that. And we had a look at how those mountings work, and the process of aligning them so that they in a very, very easy motion of lining them up north-south, that they counteract the Earth's rotation, and at the right speed you can track, and therefore you can take long exposure photographs, which is what Stephen's done and other astrophotographers do. And the end results, of course, is what we've been seeing throughout the show.
Absolutely, and once again, I want to remind people of the photo that comes up at the beginning of the show. Again, compliments of Stephen Chadwick.
Yep.
And it's been fascinating to watch some of his shots. Now, okay, over the last 2.5 years, have there been any special show that stuck out to you, Ian?
Well, I suppose the one that was perhaps the viewers didn't really realise what we got up to make it, the one of the Mars landings that we covered.
One of the Mars landings.
Yeah. Well, not during the period, but the one that was around at that particular time, and I forget the exact date. But given the track record of some of the probes that have gone to Mars, which wasn't actually very good, and given the complicated nature of this particular landing, there's always a high chance that something could go wrong, and then we'd be sitting there waiting for the results to come in, and then the whole thing turns to custard, and there is no results. So
now that was what the 7 minutes of death or something, wasn't it? That they called, that NASA called it.
Yeah, that's what they called it, and luckily for us, we didn't actually do that live and then just sit through it. But what we did do, of course, was we didn't really know what the outcome was going to be, and in the meantime, the show had to be edited, and it was going to appear after the event. So, of course, what we had to do was a little bit of jiggery pokery on your side there, George, was to we did 2 shows, well, 2 intros.
Yep.
One saying, "Oh dear, how sad, never mind, better luck next time," and the other one saying what a marvellous effort and what a fantastic result it was, which turned out to be the reality, and so that's the one that people saw. So we had a bob each way, and we just had to wait and see what came out, and so so that was a bit of humour, knowing about, maybe this is what people do on situations like that when they can't sit there live. I can imagine it could be quite embarrassing sitting there live and everything didn't actually work too good.
No, especially if you're set up for one thing and the other event happens.
Yes, but we got around that.
We're with Southern Nights, your local astronomy program, and we're with Ian Cooper. Good evening, Ian.
Again.
And we have one of those weeks for NASA where they need another 7 automatons for the old Mars landing. I mean, Curiosity killed the cat.
Killed the rover too.
Sad news, wasn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, but it was a high risk venture. And nothing dead, nothing gained, but in this case, back to the drawing board.
Once again, you're with Southern Nights, your local astronomy program, and we have our local astronomer, Ian Cooper, with us.
George?
And of course, today's big news, or this week's big news, is Curiosity killed the cat.
But it didn't kill the rover.
Didn't kill the rover.
One more for NASA this time.
Well done, NASA.
And I think, it's just another facet of the interest that people have in space, in near space, the other planets in the solar system. The fact that you can get out there and with your own telescope and see so much. And then, of course, now we have probes landing on these planets, flying around them, mapping them probably even to a great extent than the Earth's even mapped, because there's very little cloud cover, that sort of thing. It just means that we know so much more about our near neighbours than we did when I first started astronomy, although they were just starting to realise what sort of a barren sort of place Mars was 40 years ago when I started off in astronomy. But they didn't know as much, about the rest of the solar system. So, and of course we've been sort of riding along with these spacecraft ever since.
So another 3 or 4 years, we'll have Google Mars.
Yeah, I think they've already got it.
Probably.
Yeah, no, I think you can go and just like Google Map Earth, you can go and pick places on Mars, and it does pay to read a bit to find out where you're going. Of course, you know, when it lands yourself in the middle of a big deep crater or something, or a valley, you get stuck or something like that. But you know that facet's there now, and you can actually get around and check out Mars in a way that you know nobody probably even dreamed of 40 years ago. That would be available in your own home to that extent, you know, without having to read about it in a book or go and see a movie about it or whatever. But now you can actually just do it in your leisure and go and explore Mars without all the worries
Well,
of getting there.
we can actually go beyond exploring Mars, because something that I just discovered that you may not have heard of before is Google Sky Map on my Android telephone.
Yep.
So you can actually have a look at, if you're looking out at the night sky and you go, oh, I wonder what that star is. You can open up your app and have a look. Just point your phone at the star, and it'll identify whether it's a star or a planet or a plane coming in. So you know, it's pretty amazing what you can do technologically, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and it makes people like me totally redundant. So that's they're great as an introduction. Some of them are getting even more sophisticated. That they can probably even be hooked up to a telescope, and you know they've got databases and that are just staggering, really, considering that they're just coming off the phone, sort of thing. So that's a facet that, once again, that there was no way would we have thought about that 40 years ago, that anybody could be even dreaming. That almost sounded too much like Star Trek or Star Wars to be a reality, and yet here we are looking at sort of thing. So you know we've covered a few of those sort of things, and also looked at things like, you know, a little bit of cosmology, looking at galaxies and stuff like that, the deeper stuff which requires telescopes, and to get a better understanding of that. And then literally coming back to Earth, and looking at things, you know, to do with that are happening nearby, stuff to do with the moon and all that sort of stuff. And there's more of that coming up in the next couple of years. We've got 3 big lunar eclipses coming up that are well placed, starting in April 2014, going through to April 2015. So that's 3 really good total lunar eclipses. And then for the younger people in the audience, and some of us if we're still around in many years' time, there's a series of big solar eclipses that come. So hopefully we'll be around to tell you about that in another format, perhaps, to advise you about what's coming up, including a total solar eclipse that crosses Palmerston North on Boxing Day. And
Horseshoe Bend, I seem to recall.
Horseshoe Bend is on the centre line. Palmerston North's just off the centre line, but it comes in at the Foxton River mouth, at the Manawatu River mouth at Foxton, and goes through Horseshoe Bend, goes just south of Pahiatua, just a little bit north of Pongaroa, and goes out by Herbertville. So that'll be something special for people. It's only 25 and a bit years away. It's getting closer every year. Before you know it, that 25 years will be up, and it'll be happening, and it'll be a pretty amazing day. If I'm still kicking, I'll be 81 or something. I'd love to be at the Boxing Day races that day. They'd have to shut the racing down for a while, because it'll get pretty dark, get very, very dark. But it'll be an amazing thing to see. From if anybody's never seen one, it's something worth travelling to. And of course, if you're going to be around in 2038 and you see one happening, then it's you know, there's just going to be something you'll never ever forget. So, and the fact that it's going to come right across your house if you live in this area, that's pretty amazing. But in the meantime, you know, as I say, we covered a good variety of stuff that I hope, you know, the audience were you know, more than happy to see, and just give an insight into the sort of what we get up to in astronomy on a fairly regular basis. And so, and in some respects, that 2.5 years was fairly typical, except for the transit of Venus, which was totally rare. Lunar eclipses and things come along at a fairly regular rate, and comets are reasonably regular without being totally predictable. And everything else, meteors that we discussed, some good meteor showers that people could get out and observe. Observing the Milky Way with binoculars, and that's a lot of fun for people. If you've got a reasonable pair of binoculars, even if you don't really know what you're looking at, you can, you know, be just overawed by just looking up in the sky, and just going along the Milky Way with a pair of binoculars. If you want to get into a small telescope, you know, just go quietly. Don't rush and buy the biggest, flashiest one in the shop or off the back of a magazine cover. Get some advice from your local astronomy society before you go ahead and spend that sort of money. And in fact, we only advise people to buy binoculars to start with. So I think we've sort of put that across in the show in the time that we've been doing it, and just want to re-emphasise that so that people are keen. you've got some young person in your family's keen, don't splash out thousands of dollars or something. You know, not to say that, you know, kids are sort of flippant, but people do sort of get into it, and then they get onto other things, and then discover the other stuff, and they can keep a love of astronomy with them for the rest of their lives, but maybe not go in and be over serious. So be careful not to get too carried away, you know, spending money on it.
So don't get too carried away like some people in the room here maybe.
But
But hey, no, seriously.
yeah, well, I mean,
We've had a lot of fun, Ian.
we have.
And we've covered a lot of interesting topics, and we've actually got a lot of good feedback from viewers. So on behalf of the viewers, I want to thank you for putting in your time and effort.
No
And you know, I know it's a passion for you, and it's been a very interesting journey beyond the stars.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome to Southern Nights once again. We're your local. All right.
They know what that means now.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Yeah. Translators on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I'm talking with a man who was struck by the Milky Way.
Yes.